Then what is worse is, where is the central bank's bank supervision? What on earth have been doing for 24 months?
Former Cabinet Minister of Finance, Foreign Affairs, Trade and Energy. Our guest today has spent 26 years inside Sri Lanka's political system, currently serving on the Committee on Public Finance and as a senior figure in the UMP, the country's oldest political party. Today we get into the state of the economy and the political structures that shape it. Our guest today is Minister Ravi Karunanayake.
We've been running deficits for 76 years. Why has no government ever considered this a major issue?
In this country of 78 years of independence, we have 42 finance ministers in this country. How do you expect this country to go? Singapore has 6 for the last 76 years. People feel more entrapped today than what they were before they went into COVID. Imagine that we have the sense of audacity that we basically have been collecting 1.5 billion revenue in exports of tea for the last 15 years. Why I said 1.5? Because the dollar depreciates. So your rupee earnings have increased, but your dollar earnings are the same. We converted a debt trap into a cash cow. The same thing is what should be done to Mattala Airport. That's the same thing that has got to be done to the ports of Sri Lanka. That's the same thing which has got to be done to Sri Lankan Airlines.
Welcome from the island.
Thank you very much.
So, Minister, I actually want to start in a very human, individual way. When we think of the IMF, when we think of the economic situation here, the IMF is praising the government. The macro situation seems stabilized. Everyone thinks that we are on a road to recovery. However, on the ground, when we talk to people that we know and we feel it ourselves, we've spoken to multiple people, including bank managers and so on and so forth, and we get the same story. The story is that the current situation on the ground is worse than what it was post-COVID and post-2020 economic crisis on the ground. That's what we are told, that people are pawning things in a record scale. Defaults are at a record high. When we go out to certain places, I have seen people, we're at Food City and Keels, buy one strand of bean or 2 strands of beans because they can't afford it. I have never seen this in my entire life in Sri Lanka. Can you explain to me why exactly this is happening on the ground, or do you agree with this assessment?
Firstly, thank you, Shani Radinos, for giving me this opportunity. And I'm happy to see 2 young talent that is doing this. I've seen it in other interviews that you have done that really provoked me to come here. Your question is very real and exactly placed in the correct picture. When a country goes into bankruptcy, it's not an easy job to come out of it. The general feeling is that if you look at the time the surgery goes on, it's painful. If you ask the doctor, he will say, yes, the operation is successful, but the recovery process, the reconvalescing period makes it difficult. Now that's the time that is going on. If you ask a brutal, frank question, the people feel that they are more entrapped than what they were before, as you quite rightly said. How do you come out of it? You have to have the feel-good factor. If the money doesn't percolate down to the pockets, there is no amount of how successful the country is if you don't have the success going down to each person's purse. That is what you're reflecting. The general public feel that inflation, even though it's deflation in central bank's terms, the cost of living is as high as what was worse than what it was prior to COVID or the bankruptcy. So economic terms is different, real life living is different. You ask the real life question, what is asked are the macro picture that is given, which is distorted. This is why I try to reflect. I try to pose the question from a perspective of ensuring people's voice is heard in Parliament. Unfortunately, these are taken in different contexts. Some take it in a positive turn, others take it from a cynical point.
Sure. Easy to clip things out. We know the feeling.
That's right. Now you're very realistic in your call on pawning. I take it a little further. The central bank came in last week. I questioned them on the total credit creation in the country. Credit creation they've mentioned was 2.6 trillion. Out of the 2.6, 1.2 trillion was leasing, 340 billion is pawning, and 280 billion is credit card. If you take the three together, I don't say every leasing is consumption oriented. If a company for tax purposes will like to take a lease so that you're totally tax deductible. Now on that you see 70% is staying alive exercise. You're either living to pay your borrowings or otherwise. Now that is a very unhealthy picture. I asked the central bank, the IMF in today's context is pushing for revenue. You all are looking at trying to have interest rates, and who is looking after the growth of this country? If you have 70% is led for consumption oriented, it highlighted that only 408 billion is for long-term investment. That's the credit creation. So where on earth are we going to basically have our future protected? Now these are the questions. I mean, thank God being former finance minister we exposed, but that's the knowledge that we want to give. And you could see our politics is not, taking something on and then hacking it, whether it's government opposition, but giving constructive ideas. If they don't take it, that's their problem.
Well, you were, as you said, you were finance minister, but you were also foreign minister and energy minister.
And trade minister.
And trade minister. These are probably the four most important portfolios other than the defense minister also, right?
Sure.
When you were looking at all of this, so we're discussing the macro picture, but as I was saying, people don't go on dates anymore. People can't afford to do anything. They don't invest in themselves. All the young people we speak to, Mr. Ravi, they have very little hope. It is very concerning, very concerning. Even us sometimes, like, do we really want to stay here? Do we really want to go? All these things exist, but where do you see the situation in 2028, 2032? We want to look ahead. I understand what you're saying, that there's a recovery period when you take medicine. It takes a little bit of time. But we don't see that the medication is working because there is no growth aspect to it. So where do you see that if we have to pay our interest rates in 2028 and 2032 and all our money is going just for interest payments, not even our debt, just the interest payments, where is this going to go? Should we stay here?
Shanil, first the question you asked and the response I gave doesn't defend what is going on. I only said the status quo.
No, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now, when you look at it, that's not the proper answer. If I was at them, it would have been different. But I'm telling what is in real life situation, what's going on. Now, your question that is there, first of all, please ensure stay. The problem that exists is you all are the part of the problem. I have 3 daughters myself, and me and Mela, my wife, we have managed to convince that the 3 of them, the future is in this country. But in order to get that, you also must live a life that is worthwhile, not to be paying somebody else's loans, not to be living for the sake of living. You also like to see a progressiveness in the country. Now, does that happen? No is the immediate answer. Why? It is part of, we all are the problem, because the Gen Z generation, which is seeing worldwide, I'm being very open because I like to see this, they basically show the other side of the hill is greener. When they get to the top of the hill, they say, I'm sorry, this is barren. Because when different governments get elected, they see otherwise. Right. Now that type of nonsensical approach had led to this type of thing. Cut the politics out. Now, can you develop this country? Yes. Is there a will? I don't see that. Now, why do you say that? The question that you pose. When you look at the macro picture and you think micro, the answer is blowing in the wind. If you basically say that you're going to pay 4 trillion from 28 April, you must have generation of revenue sufficient to pay that.
Yeah.
If you're only going to get your remittances coming from people who work overseas, or the little that you basically tax and leave from the foreign companies that export, insufficient. You've got to export your revenues out to pay your debts. That is not happening. We only talk. We show that we have cash in hand. You cut your revenue, you cut your capital expenditure and ensure we have cash in hand. That's not development.
Right.
That is where things have to change. So I fault the people, cynical thinking of the people, as well as the younger generation for opening a can of worms without providing a solution.
No, absolutely fair enough. Actually, so this is going to be the main part of this whole episode, is the solutions.
Yeah. And if you say, is this in Sri Lanka only? I'm sorry, no.
Absolutely.
It is the winds that blew from Egypt with the change that took place at that time. I forget what the name they used.
The Arab Spring.
Arab Spring. And it went far from Arab to the rest of the world that is there. It's still not knowing at what this whirlpool is. That is the unfortunate problem in this. So I guess the quicker that younger generation feel that there is a rectification in the thinking process, along with the elder people who must also take rectification in the way that has been driving this, you will get an answer that is there.
When I think of Sri Lankans though, Mr. Ravi, when we go abroad, most Sri Lankans do very, very, very well. It's become a running joke almost, because it's like we have the talent, they go there, they become the CEOs of top companies. In the US, Sri Lankans are the second highest income bracket of immigrants after Indians, I believe, or Iranians. So why are we going abroad and doing extremely well, but we are being extremely constrained here? Can you really...
If you work 10% as much as you work overseas here, we'll be a very industrious country. Unfortunately, people go overseas, they slog themselves, but when they're here, they want their parents to earn for their children's living. So that is...
But is that the case with, like, I mean, yeah, it might be the case with some...
No, you all may be a small drop in a different thinking process. But majority, if you're given an option of being politics for 2018 Parliament, we have faced 7 elections. If you give an option of asking, would you like a job or would you like a dole to stay at home, they'll opt the second.
Absolutely agree.
So 1,000 rupees, now see what happened now, this government, Anwar Dissanayake, in his own political way, he looked at the present Middle East situation and said, I will give 7,500 for April for us Vesuma's people. Thinking is okay, but what do you give the message out? A hard-working person who pays his taxes and brings the money to give the government a right to pay a dole to the people out of the taxpayers' money, they get nothing. The guys who get that basically do nothing to get it.
So as the incentive.
Absolutely. So why work?
So what's the alternative though?
You've got to ensure that all of you all look at Singapore as a role model. Look at Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand to go and see. Come back and say, hey, that is more advanced than we are. If you look at 1948, Sri Lanka and Japan got the independence almost the same time. We had a $48 per capita, they had 49. They had no natural resources, we had everything. Today they have 55,000 per capita and we have 5,000. There has to be some bloody difference.
Where do you think it went wrong?
It is the people's thinking process. The introverted, non-exerting mentality, everything to be given for nothing. That's the way. Now, Chair Javardhan in 78 changed that. He moved it from a closed economy to open economy.
Yeah.
But every political party keeps blaming them, but doesn't give a solution for the 48-year-old change that has taken. That's where we are. We're very happy blaming the next door neighbor instead of saying whether the fellow was working hard or whether he was thinking different.
I'm glad you brought up Singapore, because actually because we get into this topic a lot about, I know you're a free market thinker.
Yeah.
So we are also free market thinkers, but Sri Lanka is a highly socialist state.
Yeah.
So
In words.
inward. Yeah, these labels are very misconstrued.
Yeah,
these
if
days.
you look at Democratic Social Republic of Sri Lanka, why the hell can't you say it's Republic of Sri
Sri
Lanka?
Lanka, yeah. We have to put in the democratic part.
We are far from democratic.
Exactly. And even our socialism is like socialism for, like, part of it is socialism for the rich, and part of it is like, it's a little strange. But to come to Singapore, actually Lee Kuan Yew, I have a direct quote from him, because he was talking about the British Fabian Society, which was essentially they advocated for socialism around the world. And his point was that he realized that before distributing the pie, he had to bake the pie first. And then when I look at that, It's like we are trying to distribute a pie that we've not even baked. We don't even have the ingredients for it. We don't even have an oven. So, do you see a way where you can actually change that outcome?
Oh yes, definitely.
But how if if it's political suicide to become a little
That's
more
where
liberalized?
that's why, Shanil, I like your styles, because you not only pose the question, but you also ask the practically whether it can be done. And that's where it is. Who has the political guts to do so? Now, I can remember when in 2001, when I was entrusted the trade ministry, we had 340 Satosa stores island-wide. We had roughly about 15,000. That's 1:10 for each shop when we had required only 1:4.
Wow.
So what we thought was, let's go from a bankruptcy, we'll bring it into commercial thing, we'll open it 24 hours, take the surplus staff to work, and we increase revenue. But people outside say, hey, you're paying salaries to these guys. The people didn't know that you were any case paying salaries, and any case they were claiming overtime. So you brought it to constructive use. We managed to increase 3 billion turnover for the year without having a salary cost. Now, that culture change led to them saying, hey, you are basically bringing this place into bankruptcy, you are robbing. All those names were heard. But 5 years later, they are worshipping me and saying, my God, we saw something in the world that we never saw before. In COVID, we would have existed if they didn't have 24 hours. That's the political witch hunt you've got to go through. The character assassination you have to live through, where my 3 daughters, basically they had to go through this with my wife for no reason, for thinking 10 years ahead. I still remember they're saying, what is all this about?
What is the resistance that you would have gotten? Because I know that you did try to, in your time, you did try to liberalize a lot of things, but you were met with a lot of resistance. What were the core components that you were being held
What
by?
we were thinking, Shanil, is liberalizing is not just giving freedom for the wild to the private sector. You bring competition in. The competition basically means private sector, government sector, you intertwine at a time where you feel best deemed fit. So that competition comes in because I believe government can't do businesses. Their thinking process is not, okay, I being a businessman, professional accountant coming to politics can role manage it in different ways. But it may not be the successors that come. Now you don't need to think of the success that come that doesn't have it. Then take certain contingency steps as to from where we are. But people don't accept it in that way because they all think anybody that comes into politics is a crook. They don't want to think otherwise. Now, Lee Kuan Yew had the sagacity to think otherwise, took bold decisions and told, go to hell with it, this is the way forward. Later, they basically help you. Now, SIA, like you quoted Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore Airlines the workers wanted a strike, and he basically said, go ahead and strike.
Yeah.
Next moment, they basically said, what do you mean? The airline will come to close, so close it.
Why can't we do the same thing?
Absolutely. Sri Lankan Airlines, when we basically told the staff that this is the way out, surgery has to be taking place, or increase the fleet in order to ensure you have more flights. We have 21 when we should have 30. But we don't need to be subsidizing a Mr. Who to fly from Hong Kong to London at the expense of Shani Loinos flying to India.
Yeah, right.
This is the problem that takes place. So we must be, if we want to have a loss leader, let it be loss leader to bring tourists into the country, not to have fifth freedom flight of flying Hong Kong to London, which we don't get anything except a loss of 100,000 rupees per traveller. That is our decision makers love to see a 90% load factor and a 15% bottom line loss. They don't understand how to relate it. That's the issue.
And how do they get away in their position of running this like they are running it? Because any private company with shareholders, they'd be out in a week.
Definitely, but the insulation that they have basically in government is just the longevity of the government. Now, if you look at in today's world, the coal one, created issue, unwanted issue, But the answer is not what they have provided. It's completely a misconception of from start to bottom. So is this done by the politician? I said no, it is also by the government servant. That is where, now I can come here and just slam the government, but that's not my intention because I have seen this through. I have been a victim of character assassination and I don't want a successor to basically see that this is the case. But corrective action can take. That's what I am basically doing.
You mentioned...
I learned this from, I would say, from Ronald Reagan and from Ranil Wickremesinghe. Ranil Wickremesinghe used, when he came in 22, he basically said, he showed what should be done and what is not being done, right? And I guess that's the same thing that needs to be done now.
Like what? You mentioned contingencies. What kind?
Now he basically, at that time, it was going to IMF. I'm not a great believer of IMF. I basically said, do what they say, but don't do what they do.
Right.
Right? Because they love to say what's going on in Africa when the countries are bankrupt.
Right.
There's only 2-3 that really made it, and that was Korea, that was Malaysia, because Mahathir told IMF to bugger off. And then you basically had Indonesia, which had, because the vice president, very professional lady, came in there, that was semi.
Right.
Now, rest of it, it has been basically the same festered wound going on and on and on without a success story. So, what basically has got to be done at that time was go to IMF, cut down your revenue, increase your revenues, cut down your expenditure, ensure get into capital expenditure, ensure that the ballooning government services reduce. We spent 1.5, at that time we were spending 1.6 trillion of our revenues, out of which 63% goes to salaries. So that is, you don't need to have IMF coming and telling us to do that.
Right. Yeah.
You have got to do yourself. That is the culture change that needs to be. And you basically have to, now, one thing I basically say, UMP has done virtually 90% of the development of this country. But they also, one of the lots basically didn't pursue the professional approach. And as a result, they got a tainted name. Then you had various governments coming in. Now you have the UMP doing on the economic front, Mahinda Rajapaksa on the war front. You had basically Sri Lanka on the household transfers.
Right.
You know, 2 free kilos of rice from moon type of approach. Then you had this government that said all these guys are a pack of buffoons, idiots and corrupt. They came in and what did they do? They basically suddenly found, wishful thinking from opposition is far different from practical running of the country. Now, 76 years, that is from independence to time that 24 September when Anwar Dissanayake took over, the total debt of our country was 28.1 trillion. Then to today, which is 17 months, the debt has increased by 4.2 trillion. Now we are 32.3. Now, what have you asked the question? We are, whether it's in 32, we'll be able to pay our loans. Now, 4 trillion has increased in this 17 months. Have you got a reciprocal increase in your on your balance sheet? If you look at from the credit side, no.
Yeah.
You are paying more loans than what you are paying then. You are in more debt than what you were then. So, what is the reciprocal gain we have got for the 4 trillion debt that we have created?
What is it? Do we have?
No, we don't. Nothing at all. Then where has it? It's gone for consumption.
Right.
Then the 17 months have yielded 4 trillion. 76 years has yielded 28 trillion. Now you calculate and see what the thing is. So that's the political talk.
Now, as you mentioned, like for 76 years, I think of the 77 years of independence, we ran a surplus only for 1 year. We've been running deficits for 76 years. Why has no government ever considered this a major issue?
Shania, the issue there is, I don't say deficit management is bad. As long as the deficit goes into asset creation.
Sure.
If it is capital expenditure that helps to build houses, to ensure business venture capitals, if you're going to be basically looking at expressways, If you're basically looking at job creation, entrepreneur trainers for the younger youth, capital knowledge being transferred, education, universities being created, fantastic. If you are borrowing at 3% and ensure you get a revenue return of cost-benefit analysis of 6%, then 3% plus super. But if you borrow at 10% and put into a revenue yielding which are 2%, that's your killer.
Right, I get what you're saying.
That's what you're doing. So you must ensure when you have your culture change or your adaptable change in your youth generation, get them to think of that area, where you basically target what you want to get or what you want to give. But there one sector you have to assist. People are the elder,
Right.
who are differently able situation. On that type of thing, you have got to ensure X amount is kept aside, that you can't compromise. And give it for them to live, not for them to suffer. That is the problem in our country. We give Asfasuma, that is transfers with earlier Janasavya, it was earlier Dole, whatever it is. They are hardly able to live. So you create paupers out of the living.
You're essentially creating a very vicious cycle, yeah? Just giving people
Absolutely.
enough just to stay in that
That's right. You make them servants of your political agenda.
political system also, yeah.
So make them live on it.
So then how do we change that mindset of people? Because again, Mr. Ravi, if you think of the state-owned enterprises you're speaking of and that change and the wealth creation, our state employment offers more security than the private sector does for people. That is why, like so many young people in university, their first choice is to go into the government sector and get a pension. Because it's a risk to be in the private sector. Wages are so low. Our banks lend to government institutions with like zero weighted risk indexes compared to the private sector. If we want to go get a loan, they will go through us like a fine comb and they will look at everything. But
And they still won't give it.
And they still won't give it. They give it for 20% interest or whatever. But why? But if a government institution goes to People's Bank, and even the NDB thing which we will get into, take it. Take anything you want, do whatever you like with it. How did that come to be and how do you even change that?
Sir, that is the thinking process which has been put to place, because you have a said apex body, central bank. Their job is to basically look at the economy of the country and assist in government's fiscal policies. Monetary policy.
Right.
With that particular process, you have given them unwanted headache without giving them responsibilities. Now they were crying for them independence, and owing to the bankruptcy, IMF insisted they got it. They know better than when they had independence. They're worse than what it was. I'll come to that later.
Yeah.
Coming on, when you are basically having a limited share, you have unlimited bonds and a limited share to supply that unlimited bond, then you have got to make the best use of the limited resources. Now, when you look at the limited resources, you are looking at whether you want people to live for today or give them knowledge to live for tomorrow.
Right.
Then you will use the Confucius statement, let's give them a fishing rod rather than give a free fish.
Right.
That's the way that you basically got to change. Now this government, all governments, they have not had the political sagacity or the guts to basically look at living for tomorrow. They want to live for today. As I said, if you basically give them an option, they'll take the path of least resistance. The issue is that they don't want to go. You ask that they prefer working a pension. They love to get a pension of 10,000 instead of work for 100,000. Insecurity. They don't trust themselves to work hard enough for the problems that are created. That's the difference.
It's also a lack of like inspiration that comes from the private sector also, right? There's not enough case studies of people that have succeeded enough to have a good enough impact on the people that are like in this public sector mentality to want to come and like get into that private sector and start businesses and innovate. If that makes sense.
That is because I don't think we insulate them with the risks that they take. Now, two of you all are doing a business.
Sure.
Now, if you are going to be taxed 30% on this innovativeness that you're doing,
Yeah.
before you start off, you'll get basically went off because 36, 1/3 of your revenue is going for somebody who didn't even think of assisting you to do that business.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the issue.
So Mr. I mean, we bring up this.
So if you
point.
basically encourage you all,
Yeah.
I believe that's the reform I believe. I believe create the entrepreneur, give him the assistance, broaden your tax base instead of killing the guy who pays the tax.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're very much on the same page there. And I think most of the guests that we've spoken to are also on that same page. So it seems like we have the answers. But what is really the practical constraint of doing that? What's so hard?
No, the problem is you also, I mean, there's no point just taking one side. When you give
Sure.
the central bank the authority of being independent and you basically tell them do nothing but only be independent, helps you nothing. But if you tell them you have to be creating 10% growth a year, 5% growth a year, you name it.
Right. Give them
Then you say
targets.
you have to create 50,000 jobs a year. You have got to have your external reserves developed by 20% per year. Then you are getting them into business. Otherwise, the guys who basically get from the universities, they select on a merit basis.
Yeah.
They select probably the least enterprising guy, but the most studious guy,
Right.
right? Then the most industrious guy will go into the private sector. He'll work 3, 4, 5 years in a private sector. If he feels that the company is not providing him the opportunity for him to grow, he'll go into a private company, start his own company. So the good guys will go out, but they won't be decision makers.
Right.
The guy who was not industrious will be a decision maker. So a guy who, like you, who said, I want to go and get a loan, that guy doesn't know what troubles you have to get to that point. That guy looks and says, no, you are going to use 100,000 to take your girlfriend for a dinner or something
right.
and bust it up. So forget it. That's the approach that this country is sunk in. Singapore for what it was, Indonesia for what it was, Thailand for what it was, they looked at different. They encourage. Decision making doesn't mean everything is right.
Absolutely.
Out of 10, 9 may be right, 8 may be right, 2 may be wrong. But that is decision making. But here it will look, you're basically trying to be making a corrupt society. These are the fear psychosis that you are given.
Well, okay, so actually let's touch on the entrepreneurship part because that is something that for us, that's a very core, important sort of element, and I'm well aware that the majority don't really care about that. But this, I think, Ms. Ravi, correct me if I'm wrong, if you can actually get a very entrepreneurial society going where people have the fishing rod, any party can stay in power for a decade or two without having to have a slugfest in political campaigns, just by giving people that material benefit, and I don't mean handouts, but that opportunity. So when we think about starting a business here compared to the regional average, it's about 60 days here, and the regional average is about 15 days. If you want to go get capital, there is nobody here to go to.
No.
There's like Hatch, I believe.
Yeah,
There's a Sri Lankan
Yeah.
government fund and one more fund, I forget what that is.
Yeah.
But even then, there is no funding mechanism. So when you were finance minister, did you see that as a really big issue?
Not only we saw it as an issue, we made it a pedestal to ensure that you go into success. I must say that idea came from Mr. Ranil Wickramasinghe and 2 other cabinet colleagues, Maithripala Sirisena as well, where we said we have 170,000 A-level students and out of that only 55,000 get into local universities. Then you had basically a gap of 110. Now that was a fundamental right that was lost out, where you want to go to university, but they are saying, I'm sorry, we have only 55,000 seats. Then you had private sector universities, which was charging a fairly decent price. I encourage as finance minister in 2015 to ensure that you give free, interest-free loans
Right.
for them to basically ensure you get the degree. Now they got the degree and they basically paid the loan back, but interest-free. So you are creating capital. Now we took that element of that interest where the banks didn't charge, we took it into the budget. So to the extent, now that was capital expenditure worthwhile. Then we basically looked at the younger generation because I was very keen to see young entrepreneurs because I was a young entrepreneur. My father also died when I was 11 years. My mother was made to this thing, and we basically came up the hard way. I was, even though I'm a chartered accountant, I studied, and a person who really, I need to mention his name, Dhiren Hallock, he taught me a completely different approach, you know. So studying and basically got to that particular point. And today we are having hands-on experience owing to that fact. You know how hard to work, you know how difficult to be professional, mix the two together, you are basically sailing. I mean, I was made best finance minister of Asia not for nothing because we slogged to it. But other people never basically look at it from the merit perspective. So I want to create that younger generation that you're yearning to get to. Unfortunately, the Sri Lankans don't think the same way you're thinking. Not that it can't be done, it can be done. We have to force ourselves to do it. I like that Public Financial Management Act, which restricted expenditure to a certain degree. But it didn't encourage one thing. They should have created encouragement. If you earn, you could spend that into capital expenditure.
Right.
This is the lopsidedness of worshipping IMF instead of worshipping our own knowledge. We had some very talented people. When I was finance minister, I had Dr. Samaratunga, very efficient secretary, but he may be thinking from a government servant point of view.
Right.
You mix our entrepreneurship, which is knowledge, then we had a very good 17 DGs. One of them are DSTs now, A.K. Senivaratna. And basically, then it was then at that time, Chandra Ekanaik was the DST. Likewise, you know, you basically, I'm mentioning because my success story was ensuring that they trusted on me, I trusted on them, and we had a house on fire. And it was moving. We moved revenue from 8.5% of GDP to 15% without a hell of a fuss, but we made a slumber awaken. So not that it has not happened, it is happening. So that's the culture change, that is the way I guess this country needs. If we want to be what our peer countries are, like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, not that it is the best, but it is better than what we are, in 10 years, you're going to take very rigid political decisions which cut across certain inefficiencies that are there, which will hurt some of the people who are living in lap of luxury, not doing anything, and then get to that point, your success story is there.
So you mentioned basically putting that excess revenue into capital expenditure while controlling your normal expenditure. Right?
Yes, yes.
So
we believe that expenditure goes up the lift and revenues up the stairs.
Right.
So you have to change that culture.
Right.
Right? And I used this sentiment that was basically looked at with Mr. Modi. He was based in a conference, and one of the foreigners, I forget his name, but he mentioned he was referring to Sri Lanka as a nation, island in poverty in an ocean of prosperity. And I thought that really awakened my sense of feeling, what the hell are we doing? For a foreigner to tell, you're sitting on a gold mine but not knowing that you're in one.
Yeah, I completely get it. Actually, I had a meeting with a client, and he was like, he wanted seafood. And then he saw the price of seafood. And he's like, aren't you guys an ocean? And are you guys surrounded by an ocean? How is seafood so expensive? And I was like, that's a good point. I have no idea why. I really don't know why that is, right? And I assume that's like for all sorts of corrupt, like oligopoly market.
No, son, you look at one further. The same crab that is caught in Sri Lanka, you go and eat in Newton Circus in Singapore.
Right.
It's cheaper than what you eat in a, I don't want to mention a good restaurant here.
Ministry of Crab.
So now you basically are looking at what the situation is. Our same old crab caught here, we Sri Lankan can't eat it cheaper than what we got to fly to Singapore and eat in Singapore.
No.
So that's the economies of scale advantage there.
Absolutely. It's ridiculous though. But actually, that brings me to the whole point of your revenue creation. Instead of the stairs, we take the elevator. how do you actually create wealth for that revenue where you have enough to put into your capital expenditure? Because you need to create that wealth,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Minister, but to me, money is just an illusion, right? It is not just hard cash. When we think of money, we think of hard cash. But you basically create wealth like Singapore did using financial services. This is just wealth being created in a digital board in the ether somewhere. How do we actually create that? Because I feel like when we think about increasing our revenue, we think of, okay, let's make some garments and sell a t-shirt and get cash for it. But we're not actually thinking about scaling our revenue from a financial services point of view, from a high value services point of view, where overnight you can change that.
Can I take the example of tea?
Sure.
It's a good example to take. Now, we have been growing tea for 150, 200 years, right? From the 1850, the British came. I don't know exactly what year they brought, but we'll say 200, 250 years.
Sure.
Now, we have not even had a dollar auction. All our sales, I mean, we consume 2% of the remnants of the tea, and all the good teas are exported. Now, we have to get in dollars now. Imagine that we have the sense of audacity that we basically have been collecting 1.5 billion revenue in exports of tea for the last 15 years. Why I said 1.5? Because the dollar depreciates.
Right.
So your rupee earnings have increased, but your dollar earnings are the same.
Right.
So you are basically 10, 12 years at 1.5 billion.
Right.
Now, if you had the dollar auction, you won't give the exporter or the importer to speculate on your rupee devaluation and depreciation.
Right.
Right? Then there was another situation. You blend, because sometimes the pure tea is basically looked at from different aspects. So you blend. You get from different area, different qualities, blend and do it. They, 2, 3 very senior people didn't want to do that because they were doing it very successfully, and they were having companies outside. Owing to their might, they were able to do it outside, but they didn't want others to do it. Then what happened was you had a non-tea growing Dubai, you had a non-tea growing Qatar that basically brought tea blending. So you had Ceylon tea exported to Qatar, Dubai. They brought Kenyan tea, they brought Vietnamese tea, they blended and see, they made the Brookbones tea and then exported.
Right.
But Ceylon tea lost its place. Now those are the sense of stupidities that we pursue without knowing what the end game is.
But I mean, if the answer is so clear, I mean, the dollar auction thing is a great point. Right?
But
So-
look, we tried to bring it, it was stopped by 3, 4 very big exporters.
Tea players.
Yeah, so when they say, who are these guys who come today to make policy? We have been 30 years in the trade.
Earning
Right.
the same amount.
Now they are earning the same amount. We want to change the 1.5 billion to 2.5 increase.
Yeah.
But the guys who have been in the trade, who have basically made their name also in the trade, they said, who are the young Turks that come and make the decision on our behalf and ruin the industry? So when you have one statement that comes from very senior guys, you basically get caught up. You're worried to take the decision. Political cabinet doesn't have the guts to do so.
Political will.
This is the problem. Then textiles. You basically had, I mean, we have been going on since of we have basically looked at earlier, we had the quota board. Then they made move vertically forward because quota went off, then they gave the country the opportunity. But we have not moved forward from thinking of developing a textile industry. We basically look at getting hangers or something, but not look at 80% that goes on for textile.
Right.
We still import 40-50% of our woolen, I think. Knits are well looked at. And because now we have been in 40, I can remember 76 Hentley garments, and you basically that story has been told. Now 45 years of success story, we still import our textile. So no positive with it. Then tourism, another success story, low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit. We don't basically give the, we send our qualified people to Maldives, they earn $600 a day, the same hotel which is better here, we earn 150 and do nothing. So this is the change that has got to be done, and we have got to look at it from a holistic picture rather than just one
Radical
area.
change.
So radical.
So when you look at the whole, is this a competition issue?
Competition without the desirable hunger in the trade. Now we collect a cess for tourism, NTD 1%, right? And then basically you use that for development of the tourist industry. But we have today a trade that doesn't invest in themselves. Now what do they say? They say politicians come and go. We can't deal with one static person. Now my mind goes again to another one. In this country of 78 years of independence, we have 42 finance ministers in this country. How do you expect this country to go? Singapore has 6 for the last 76 years.
Right.
Education, we have 32 education ministers for these 76 years. Singapore has 4, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
So you could see long-term national interest is looked at. Look at the change in India. I mean, India is a country we need to. We have 5, 6. My belief in diplomacy is that we should be friends with all, enemies with none.
Right.
And with India being close has to be a very close affinity. Cash-rich China is the deep pockets, very important for economy. USA, very good for human rights and diplomacy, and we've got to be very close with them. They have given market access without loans being created. EU is a very friendly with being British Commonwealth, with UK coming in. Absolutely essential, we must think of them. Then Japan, that is there. Then you have got Russia, that is thinking outside the box. If we have this lot, and you basically look at, instead of being in bed with anybody, but being friendly with everybody, I think we'll move forward. Then you basically look at market access. We don't need loans, give market access.
Yeah.
That's what you all are looking at. Now, market access is the most important element in today's context. Then you basically, Chanil, at the initial stage, you asked a very valid question. Is there a worthwhileness living in this country? And I said, yes. I have convinced my 3 daughters. Now they are in business. They are basically thinking completely different, far better than I would have taken, right? My eldest daughter, who basically put a lot of effort in. Now I see the second daughter coming and moving. And the third daughter, without getting involved, she has more influence because their thinking process is in the modern world, right? The digitalized era.
Sure.
Now, when you say, I am asking, I can see from your entrepreneurship that is there, if today you have a 100,000 rupee earning that you have done overseas, if you want to import something to this country, you pay taxes at the point of entry, right? You pay duty, CAL, PAL, cess, all of them, and you bring it in. Then when you come in here, you basically have to sell. On that sale invoice, you'll pay 18% tax.
On top.
Yeah, 18% on what you import, yes. 18% VAT, 2.5% SSCL. Then you'll pay, if you go to a restaurant, 1% on NTD and 10% service charge. Now, if you are the owner of that company, you while consuming, assuming Enos comes to your restaurant with you are the owner, now you earn the profit of that. Then further the tax you collected from him, you give to the government. Now you make profit on that, you're paid 30% on your tax. Now you, as a company, you want to take into dividends.
Right.
You take that out, you pay dividends, 20% or 30% that is there. End of the day, what the hell have you worked for?
Yeah.
That is where I was pursuing that we should have, on the basis of very broad base, ensure that you have a maximum 17.5% tax. And also indirect tax. I'm a believer that indirect tax is also required until VAT or the present SSCL. It is rigorous. VAT is more fair because you have a input-output basis.
Why would you say that that's fair, Mr. Ravi? Because I'm not really a big believer in that, because I feel like that is the equal consumption tax even on the poor. The poor and the rich are paying the same thing, right?
Sanil, you also must upgrade yourself to think big. Because if you say, I am a person who earns 60 million to come under the threshold, now it has been reduced to 36, then what happens is you basically are unable to take the input tax. But assuming you are 36 billion and you say, I am opting to pay VAT. What do you do when you go and buy this computer? You will have 18% VAT recall when you pay your sales. Now you're collected from the consumer 18%. You set it off against the computer that you invested, which you paid 18% tax in it.
Right.
So when you set it off, virtually it has come without tax.
Right.
That's the
Right.
progress approach.
I get what you're saying.
Right. Now, when you think of that, why I said this country requires indirect tax also. Maybe that's harmful, but it is useful because you have to have revenues also.
Right.
But you must have the revenues and ensure that you basically give the people a feeling their tax revenues are used properly.
Sure.
Expressways, elevator. Now, another classic, I give this as example. I like that younger guys are questioning me. If you go on the expressway, you get in the car and you basically, when you get into the first outward point, the gate, you get a person seated there, you get chit. Right? Now you go out into the next one, you have the same chit collected and basically you have money paid and you come out. You have 1,340 such people. On your right hand side, if you go in Karunanayake, you will have ETC. Your number plate is attracted onto the CCTV. This thing, it automatically, no wasting time. You go through without any problem. Now, why don't you have CCTVs all over, right? Instead of having 1,400. Use the 1,400 to develop, flowers and sales points and have more restaurants on the waypoint. Now, in this entire expressway, you have only one spot that is there for restaurant services. So, imagine if you want to go to the toilet, you live in Colombo, if you want to go to Hambantota, which is the longest point, or to the Mattala airport, you won't be able to go to a toilet unless you go out of the system and come back. No, this is the lopsided development in this country.
No, I get what
Not that we are unable, we don't have the opportunity to brace the system and ensure that you have the political will to break the system.
So I actually want to go back to like the whole startup side of things, because as you said, like the tea, the textiles, the tea especially, they were very against what you were trying to do that would actually help their own industry compete globally. Yeah. I think you agree with me, because we've spoken about this, is that businesses here, especially the big corporates, I have so many criticisms of them because they are totally happy just being insulated within here with no desire to compete globally. Can you explain to me how in the future, especially with AI, we have the opportunity to quantum leap certain things. But in this day and age with India growing so fast, Tamil Nadu is like 13-14% a year right now, growth rate, I believe. How could we possibly in 6, 7, 10 years, let's say, are we going to be a country where we simply stick amongst each other like Cuba and we're happy just competing with ourselves and we're going to get crushed globally? Is that where we are headed? Is that our future? Is that what we have to say is the truth?
If we go the way we are going now, you have given the prescription, the disease and the prescription. But if you want to come out of it, you've got to dare the system. You have India, which is basically a 5 trillion economy in the next year. Yeah. 5 trillion. As you said, Tamil Nadu is growing almost 1 trillion that is there. Forget all of them. 5 trillion, and if we take 3% of that, our GDP can go up by about 6-7%. I mean, we are just 5,000 per capita when India is basically less than that, but a more robust economy. We have got to look at globally and act locally. What we think is that we think the entire world is inside Sri Lanka. Absolutely. Not Sri Lanka is in the world. Yes. That's the mentality that our political leadership going to the social thinking and all.
Yeah.
I must say the social thing, I remember Jaya was stating, you are a socialist until you first get your million rupees.
Right. Yeah.
So, or your women's rights are there till you marry.
Right.
So these are things that basically have been politicians who have been weathered the world, and you see with experience, they say, and unfortunately we are there to learn. But today's generation, we don't learn. Everybody tries to teach the others.
Right, I get what you're saying. So, how, actually, just to touch on the
Yeah.
whole VC, how do you view this whole VC environment that we're in for young entrepreneurs to get capital funding, innovation? We seem very risk averse to anything that seems a little bit risky, seems a little bit sci-fi. Like, oh, no, let's not do that.
I would, when I was 215 finance minister, I encouraged a spend of the central bank can be told that you direct the economy into such areas where the banks are given a direction to invest 2% of your total lendings to youth at this particular rate. Women, likewise. Small and medium micro enterprises, likewise. Unfortunately, or fortunately, then they had a situation that they went through, but they don't pursue because the banks are always looking at what is able to make best profit.
Sure.
Which you can't fault them because they have got to do for their depositors' interest. But the economy has to be looked at.
Yeah.
Now, what does that economy? That is where the government steps in and directs because you have mandatory reserves. You use that idle reserves to bring in this particular thing. Right? You have the supply side that is there. Now, our country believes, or our central bank believes that controlling the economy is anti-inflationary approach. Everything is inflation-led.
Inflation, right.
You kill the inflation and you think your economy is ticking good. No way. That is where you said people feel more entrapped today than what they were before they went into COVID. Not that they have gone into COVID. They have been taken into the COVID. They have been taken into the debt trap of the economy. Now that is where I believe central bank is a lot of theoretical economists that don't know what the real life situation is and guiding the businessmen who are fighting for survival in the economic world, in that battle. And here am I questioning, and what do we get? We basically get an onslaught from them. What are you questioning us? We know it better and they screw it up. Take the case of, can I use the example of NDB?
Yes, please. Let's go ahead.
NDB is a case in point. We basically asked them, they came 2 days before to the central bank and they were trying to be muted in answering that question. Here is a national tragedy that has come about owing to a genius that has used the financial weakness in the lacuna in the system.
You're talking about the 13 billion.
13 billion, that is what is reported now. It started with 176 transaction that took place in 20th March, which they immediately went to one person who basically was a whistleblower, came up and told because she wanted to protect herself. That came out, then it led to Friday it was 370 because 380 which they reported 76. But by Monday it became 13.2 because apparently it was been going on for 24 months. Now forget, the bank has many corridors, that has to keep checking. One is the internal audit, one is the external audit, one is the bank supervision units that are there, all of them. Then what is worse is, where is the central bank's bank supervision? Under Central Bank Act 80 Section 2A, they are mandated to look at it. And they are on online supervision as well. What on earth have been doing for 24 months in the financial reporting of NDB's report? In page 347 for year 24 and 25, there was a report of 3.1 billion and 12.1 billion as financial assets. And what has that been perused? Because when you have such a huge increase, it leads to fictitious transactions or fictitious assets. Then has the central bank independent unit looked into FIU, suspicious transactions. What is all this about? They should have flagged it. And this money has gone out from NDB to another bank. Now that bank in outstation has basically used that, and that money, majority of them have gone out of the country. But I would say, with all responsibility, the financial system should not be tested without any fear at all. There is no run on any bank required because they have taken money not from depositors, from the NDB's capital reserve. Right? But that doesn't mean that you have to exonerate central bank's role that should be done. There's nothing personal, but I have been personally going on because I believe when we were running the economy, central bank was part of the problem, not the solution. They made life to make credit creation at 28%, 22% was a difficulty. They gave all the excuses. Now at 28% lending to consumer spending, there's no problem.
Why were they against the credit creation?
Because they don't see that they say money transactions coming in will create inflation. Inflation creation means central bank has to be involved in mopping that up. They don't.
So they are saying that if we create money, that will create inflation. We don't want that problem.
Absolutely right. Why
That
trouble?
is crazy.
That is the craziness. Your problem is not politicians. Your problem is the central bank. Your system change should be central bank, not to be independent. I fault Ravi Karunanayake for giving independence without resultant accountability
Standard.
and responsibilities that flow with it. That's why I said give them growth rates development, part of it. Because if you exclude your monetary aspect to them, they are not held responsible in the entire economic system where they have to report to parliament.
Right.
No, anywhere.
Yeah.
That's where the problem is.
So is there no criteria for these
No.
FIUs? A standardized procedure like, okay, because in my mind, if there are high frequency deposits or trades or very high amounts, that gets flagged.
This intelligent person used it below the radar 5 million. Right? Now then, but that is exactly the case. When it goes to another bank, when you have 76 accounts coming to that particular one, it is suspicious transaction. Now, if it was suspicious transaction, was it reported to that bank? One to the other. Then the receiver should say, we have got this coming. Is it suspicious? Then the central bank should basically look at it from both and say, hey, there has been a similar going here, there and everywhere. Have we not looked at it? Then if it is suspicious transaction, is the FIU unit come back? What on earth have been doing for 24 months?
So are they not interested? Have they been paid off?
They could be paid off, but I don't want to subscribe to that thinking. I believe it is incompetency and arrogance. Right? Those are the things that are there. Somebody has to basically point the gun and now say it is. Right?
Fear?
Fear, obviously. Now, I mean, I as a member of parliament, I am being harassed by questions are not answered. They come arrogantly try to think they know it all. Right? Thank God at least there's a way being shown in a manner which is not so dangerous at the moment, but it could be if they're not handled in this manner. Now, I brought this up in Committee of Public Finance, and the answer we got as members were putrid. They say we don't want, it can't be exposed at this moment. What exposed? For 24 months they were hiding it.
Can't be exposed because they are afraid of rocking the markets.
Nothing to rock the market. They rocked many banks, many financial institutions before. What have they done for that? Because we didn't have the guts to take these officials that think they have a halo around them.
So
I'm saying this, I want your younger generation to think. I'm not a politician who's a businessman. I'm a businessman being a chartered accountant, coming with both experiences and putting it in. And I want you all to see that every politician is not a joke as well. I mean, we may be, but that is not the way that we are looking at it. We also have certain inputs that are there, which has helped us to come to where we are. And I want you all to take this forward. That's why I particularly came for these interviews. I like the style you'll ask, and we've got to show the world that we also have talent and we don't need to be worshipping the white skin only.
absolutely. I would argue that we have much better talent in a lot of areas.
Are there any repercussions?
So tourism, financial sector, insurance, blue economy on the seas, the logistics that we have. Then you look at basically the talent, the working talent that we have got. My God, we have a sky is the limit. I mean, look at agriculture. We are blessed with one of the best fertile soil, but we import 1.1 trillion agriculture items into the country.
But these are because of market mafia.
No, I think it is basically the lack of interest, because you look at the farmer from a guy who is just downtrodden, just doing sustainable agriculture, but you have to make him commercialize. That's the way that you've got to do. I mean, ensure, I suggest the best is tax incentive. Give them blue chip companies or the profit making companies. We will make your, at the moment, 30% taxes to 10%. if you basically ensure that the agriculture is commercialized.
Right.
You make profit, take that off, tax deducted.
Right.
See, IMF can be told, go to hell.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're bringing revenue.
Because these are sector carve-outs.
What you want, if you want to bring revenues for development, say, okay, we want 10% of GDP in revenue, right, in this area.
Right.
But don't tell us what we are going to collect from payee, or whether we are going to collect from advertising, or whether you are going to collect from entrepreneur, this thing. Collect the tax, use it.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. And these are like sector carve-outs. The IMF can't come and be like,
Absolutely can't. And when I asked them this time, they said, no, we are not imposed that. Now look at, we have Port City, we have BOI, we have EDB, but the poor institutions don't have the capacity to sell. You don't have them a tax incentive. Nobody will come for the love of the country. Sri Lankans may do so because it's our nation, but others will come when they say economic opportunity, either critical mass, if not the economic advantage. If the economic advantage is not there, you basically have to sell it by creating it. That is why free trade agreements are required. We have market taxes. This is the way to go forward. Now, you don't need to be tapping. Now, we are tapping the US market. And you have a businessman who's running USA, now Donald Trump. Suddenly, an internal policeman has become an external salesman. Right? So, he's changing his philosophy. Now, we must know how to integrate in the system. So, if we have a huge surplus in USA and we have a negativeness in the other countries, you basically patch up. You tell the Americans, you come to Sri Lanka, export to India using us. We have duty-free access.
right, right.
That's where the thing is.
Like a hub towards other big markets.
That's right.
But do you think with the current government's ideology, that's even something that we can
Feasible?
look forward to, something feasible that will even happen? Because it would be going against their, let's say, ideology that...
My dear, now you ask the question whether you want to live here or not. If you want to think like them and live like them, it's different. Right?
Yeah.
These are enriched country to enrich ourselves, or is it enriched country to enrich just a handful of people? We want to enrich all.
Yeah.
So if you want to think, then forget the way they're thinking.
Yeah.
You've got to make them think the way you're thinking.
Yeah.
Big,
Absolutely.
large.
No, absolutely. It's just that those ideologies are so
No.
ingrained.
I must say in a convoluted manner, they have not changed from the UMP policies. They're only shy to adopt it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
they are dating without the woman in shown, So they're getting there.
Right.
Hell can't they basically move forward?
Flirting a little bit. Right. I want to bring, because to continue this, I want to bring up, because you said banks, and you gave a very feasible solution towards putting a certain section of their revenue for certain sectors and people and groups.
Yes.
But I don't want to go to a bank to go get a loan for my business. I want to be able to go to an investor and have an investor equity ecosystem where I can go to you and say, Mr. Ravi, this is my business plan, this is my idea, these are my sales, blah, blah, invest in me. And you say, great, let's do it. Take that risk, I'll put in the money. But there is no environment for that here. I have knowledge and from like certain people in the tech industry, friends who work in it. I don't know if you're aware, but IFS and WSO
Yes.
are very, very big companies
Yes.
here, right?
Yes.
They are planning to remove all Sri Lankan operations. So they're on a firing layoff spree right now as we speak. And these are the upper middle class, young people who work in tech.
Yeah.
Now, I would think that the government would consider that a very serious problem and intervene and offer some sort of incentive to WSO2 or these IFS companies from the US to keep these workers here, to keep operations here. What happens when they're gone? So they're taking the compensation money that they get from these US companies and all of them are leaving. Because why would they stay?
Sanil, are they leaving or they're migrating to the next point? They're using the same company because what happened, this government brought in 30% taxes and 15% for export and getting the people to pay to 36%. That is the issue. Now they are basically going to IMF's madness, trying to impose will on Sri Lanka without knowing what the ground situation is.
Yeah.
They come and say, you're working, you're earning 2 million, pay 36% pay.
Yeah.
Now the same thing, you go to Dubai and basically live, you get nothing, you don't pay zero. Company pays 7% taxes. If you are here, you have to pay 30% if it's locally developed, if it's 15% if it's export given. So on that basis, they say, why do you want to be here? We'll relocate ourselves.
Yeah.
Now that is the problem. So not that basically, now you touched on a very raw nerve, venture capital, right? That should be mandated.
Yeah.
Where you basically say here, younger generation come with ideas, ensure because every venture capital won't be successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the failure is part of the economy.
Absolutely. And that's a common
That
mentality
is
in the
absolute-
US.
But only
Failure.
problem is, the failure they succeed because
Exactly.
company they are able to sell their debt.
Yeah.
That is,
Yeah.
that sell your debt means then it's a workable proposition.
Yeah.
Now, companies that are there, you make losses, you carry forward the losses because you can't earn the profit in the first day, right? So on that basis, now I give a classic example in our own company. Now, when we were looking at much more nostalgic, where we take it less. Then I left the company, daughters took over. They basically changed it. They are much more harder. They made profit from the day. So their thinking process different. But we believe that it's a different. But if you don't carry forward a loss, then you are utilizing all your profits to be wiped off in the first stage. But carry forward losses are helpful to the economy. Because you are investing today, because it's like venture capital. You are using the taxes deferred and allowing the company to grow, and more earnings help you to pay the loan off.
Yeah.
That is the approach.
Creating
So on that basis, venture capital must be made that they are basically taxed at 5%. If you give it to this loan, if you are able to create businesses, that is exempted from profit. That's the way to take it forward. Not that we did it. Unfortunately, when I moved from finance to foreign, thinking process changed from the same. You have to have the same thinking pattern going forward. You can't get caught up in a roadblock because lack of knowledge by the successor.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
No, I get what you're
We
saying.
have a lot of talkers and very few doers. That's the problem in our country.
So the public VC fund that Sri Lanka has, I don't know what it's called, Sri Lanka VC something.
There are, but it doesn't have the depth in it. You have a venture capital 1 billion, what the hell can you do with it?
Yeah, but that's the, yeah, exactly. Actually,
Because normally they come in,
ICT.
they venture yourself in, and they walk out at a time that you feel best at a agreed pace. Then if you have businessmen that they think that they come and try to take your business, that is the protection you need to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just doing some research on the government program. I think it's called ICTA. So they give grants up to 1.5 million rupees per startup. They choose around 10 startups per year, right? And they've
That
invested.
is the ICTA, that is a computer.
ICTA, yeah. What do you might know more about this?
Yes,
You can give
yes.
us
So that is a
context.
government-owned one that was developing the digitalized economy, and they were coming very forcefully. It basically had some very radical thinking people, and unfortunately, when people were making success stories, they were blocked. I can remember 2015, they were blocked. Well, I can remember 2015, Mr. Harin Fernando was technology minister,
Yeah.
and we allocated 10 billion. He basically got a fantastic team going forward, but with the success, he was not allowed to utilize in the manner expected of it. They basically gave, here, do this, that and the other. But when it came to implementation, money going out, it was stopped.
Why?
Why? The officials that are going to sign off didn't sign off. They said, no, it's too risky.
Too risky.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It comes down to mentality again because
It's a mentality and also the way that we think in Sri Lanka. Because if by chance the person who signs it off, right, assuming the two of you want to do this and take this from a Sri Lankan interviewing point of view, like we all know something into the Indian model or outside. Now you basically say you want 10 million, right? Want to buy equipment, online, etc. But they say, no, this guy is only looking at far-fetched, it can't happen. And you abort it or you give it. If you give it, you may succeed, you may fail. Now the guy who gave it, if he is successful, won't be questioned. If it's failure, which may be 6 times out of 10, he'll be questioned, why have you given these two? Why didn't you give the other two?
Right, right. So they'll get in trouble no matter what.
Discretionary power. Today you can question the discretionary power. So that is an issue that basically comes about.
So what's happening with ICTA right now, if you know?
ICTA is wound up to start anew,
Okay.
and that also is handled by Hans, which is all knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
But and Ranga was there, not drive, but you have to drive it to destination. You can't say I am on a journey without knowing how long it takes and to where your
you wanna
destination
go.
is. So you have got to say, yes, I'm driving it at this pace for this purpose.
One of our
Now,
previous...
another example you asked, tourism. If you want to go to, we'll say, to the East Coast, which has super beaches, or you want to go to Jaffna, you basically have got to traverse at least 5-6 hours on the road. Now, this is within our country. It is easier to come from Chennai to Colombo than to go from here to Pasikuda
Yeah.
or to go from here to Jaffna. So, there is the problem. Now, when expressway, UMP decided to have expressways, basically it was laughed upon as to what the hell are these guys doing. Today, the time has reduced from 6 hours on the road to 1.5, 2 hours that are there. So you can see economic advantage.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I give another classic example. President of a country, he must be able to commute from one to the other at ease.
Yeah.
Now, you can go to Jaffna or to Trincomalee or to Hambantota by bullock cart, by motorbike, by car, by bus, by helicopter. Now, if you walk, it will take 2 days. If you go by helicopter, it takes 45 minutes. If you are a busy, hard-working president, why
It's so
on earth have you got to waste time on a road when you can ride in 45 minutes? Now, that should be encouraged. Yes, if you're going anything more than 2 hours, go by this. Why waste time? Because, I mean, it's not consumption-oriented, ostentatious-oriented, I'm sorry. It is absolutely, you are limited time to maximize use.
Absolutely.
So, if you go by helicopter, then that's conspicuous living. But that's the change. So, I guess these are modern thinking ways.
Absolutely. I mean, it's about productivity and efficiency. You can...
Why the hell is Americans going to the moon when the guys can't even basically live on Earth?
Yeah.
But they want to see what is there tomorrow.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
So these are the things that you got to ensure. Now, if you bring a bureaucrat to the next interview, he'll answer quite to the contrary of me, maybe. But he doesn't have insulate the powers that we may have that he doesn't have.
Yes. Actually, one of our previous guests told us that he went to a venture capital meeting. It was a government-funded one. And they were discussing what to invest in. There's 15 of them, all bureaucrats, and they all decided, Minister, that they're going to invest in one company. They're going to put all the money in one company and make it a unicorn. And they were dead set on it. And our guest was the only one who was like, are you sure? Don't you want to use plant 1,000 seeds?
Yeah.
And out of those 1,000, 5, 6 will be unicorns. But no, they went all in. So you said they're risk averse. This seems like the riskier thing to do by going in on, I'm assuming that's their friend.
No, their risk averse is not from there. If they are questioned as to why you gave this and so that can be a problem in today's context. No, not only that. Today, questioning is a government servant can be questioned from the CID, the police, the Auditor General Department, CBOC, the external auditors, the banks, the courts. So he doesn't know where to place himself. But he must be given the freedom. If he given authority, responsibility, he must be able to account for it. But if you are accounting and they say, I'm sorry, you have basically done this for some ulterior reason, you have to insulate him for making that decision.
Right. Why has no government ever tried to give them the empowerment to make these decisions?
Unfortunately, the problem in our country, as I said, you can't have businessmen seated in a political seat, they'll think it deviously. And people are the ones who make that. They think, hey, that guy is now basically now ministers, they have basically advanced themselves to have houses. Is it a problem? No. But it is a problem for the people. Why did he get that? How is he getting that? Now, okay, justify that. The normal thinking, capital-oriented, normal democracy, whether 1 house, 10 houses, if you're able to show so and go forward. But not having today and having tomorrow, how you got it, you have to explain. But if the people think having is a problem, then it's a entire system is a failure. Then you've got to go back to communist oriented where each one has its only this share, nothing more. That's the problem. So even the Chinese and the Russians don't think like that.
Absolutely.
But the Sri Lankans are thinking otherwise.
Well, I believe the current JVP General Secretary said in an interview that his favorite country was the Soviet Union.
Oh my God.
And my jaw was on the ground.
I mean, are you surprised?
It's not even a country anymore. And I was
But
like,
I don't think the Russians know that he's thinking this way.
I don't think the Russians will say, oh yes, you know what, the Soviet Union was the greatest economic model. Even Vladimir Putin does not agree that the Soviet Union was the correct economic model.
No.
But we want the Soviet Union.
Correct.
So what entrepreneurship and what VC capital?
But that is the Lenins and the Stalingраds that they talk of. But they are today living in more than Elon Musk type of environment.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to make this.
Get him here next week.
We are not-
No, because it will help
Language
him
barrier,
for
to
sure.
answer on questions I have asked. I am telling them they should be like the UMP. And I congratulate them every time they make that positive thing, because UMP has done a hell of a lot to the country, but also done some wrongs. Get the rights that are there 90%, instead of killing the 10%.
Yeah. I understand that way of thinking about it. Actually, I want to, because you were energy minister. Yes. And
I was trade, finance, foreign, and then
energy
travel
minister.
related.
It's all
And
very,
business development.
very overlapping, very connected to one another. Do you agree? My take is, Minister, that energy is the backbone of an economy.
Oh, yes.
Without energy, you can forget about it. I actually also, I mean, the analyst bench that believes that the US strikes on Iran currently, part of that is to reduce China's energy consumption, dependence, because even a 2-3% disruption in China can really bring the economy down. So take Venezuela and Iran, that's about 11 to 15% disruption for them. So over time, that will have a major impact on America's main competitor, right? So if you're talking about Sri Lanka's current energy crisis, I think our reserves are very low, few weeks.
Yes.
The Strait of Hormuz is still closed.
Yes.
You were minister from 2018 to 2019. You also criticized the current government's regulatory reversals on renewable energy. Where do you see our energy policy going? Do you think that we have reserves for some time?
Chanel, as most of the questions you are asking off the cuff, I remember, if I may write, on today's energy, we have roughly 5,200 installed capacity. And of that, we have about 3,500 in renewable capacity. Solar, 2,200 to 3. Then you have the hydros, mini and big ones. And if I may go back, the balance, then you have coal and then thermal. Now, on that particular score, I was very critical of the present government for not encouraging renewable, because renewables is not firm generation, but renewables with BESS, that is battery energy storage systems, makes it firm. Now, that's where the encouragement needs to be done. The previous administration, I think Kanchana Vijayasekaran must be congratulated, he basically went forward and gave that, he had the audacity to take it to the next level. I did one thing, but I was short in that tenure. He basically had 2 years. He made some very bold decisions. He virtually following what we did in a more sagacious manner. So on that basis, he gave, example, 4754 BESS. And you were able to have a return in 4 to 5 years and basically give a conversion from oil dependence to solar. Renewable.
Renewables.
Now, renewable is completely at our advantage because natural resources in our country, wind, water, solar. But this government changed it, where they brought that BESS rate down to virtually non-existent. They didn't give a rate to it with finality, so people didn't want to invest in it. Because they were saying they were paying too much. But owing to the fact that when the country went into bankruptcy, there was a risk factor. So at that moment, they encouraged to come forward. I'm not talking the Adani's thing, which was a different one. I'm talking of local. Renewable, we don't need foreign unless it's a big one.
Yeah.
Our local entrepreneurs can do it.
Yeah.
That's where the situation was. So discouragement was by walking away from the encouragement that was given.
Why would they?
Now, if you look at the 215, we basically encourage this renewable energy. I can remember the solar. We had in 215 1.5 megawatts. I can remember then Ranjit Siyamalapiti was the Minister of Power and Energy, Ajit Pereira, UMP Deputy Minister. We basically looked at certain things and said, let's encourage renewables. And they gave an idea. And I brought into the budget by saying, we'll make it tax-free. And earnings are also tax-free. So we gave the hell of a fillip.
Yeah.
Now, when Gamini Dissanayake ensured Mahabali was, the 30 year was brought in with JR's blessing to 5 years, he managed to add on roughly about 500 megawatts of power into the energy, right? We were able to add with this Ajit and Ranjit Siyamalapiti idea to Ajit's one that came in, we were able to add today there's 2,900 of that, of which almost 80% is on rooftop. And simply because the idea we gave to make it duty free. There's no cost to the government. We only bought a concept and today generating virtually 20% of the generation today on solar without a capital cost at all. So when we generate 2,500 without a noise, it's not seen and heard because it's not given publicity.
I'm kind of confused. So why would any government ever discourage investment in renewables?
No, the thing is this, when you can get hydro at 250 a unit,
Yeah.
when you can get coal at 21 and you pay BESS 47.50,
Yeah.
why should you be at 47.50 when you can be at 21? Now, but they don't understand that coal money goes out of the country.
Yeah.
But for solar, for renewal, for water, it doesn't go out of the country.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. But the thinking process is different. Somebody think, why are you paying 48 rupees for a unit? Not knowing that it 21 rupees plus the capital cost comes to 30, with 65-70% of that going out in foreign exchange.
Right.
So they don't see the holistic picture.
Yeah. They're seeing it as a small little carve out. In
That's right.
So what's the justification when this argument comes out you're bringing up?
Well, I
What's
can
their
argue with
justification?
sensible people like you, but the people who don't want to see it, how can you argue?
So what is
So
the
what do
counter?
they? Yeah.
Counter arguing, getting them to know. I mean, when they face a power crisis, only they'll remember. When they see bankruptcy, only they'll remember. Yesterday, coal debate, they suddenly see, oh my God, now earlier they said no problem, now they say they have a problem. Now, the next one is when that particular component comes into the bill, right? Then only people will look at, why the hell are we paying? Then when we said so, they are not taking it.
What kind of role does the CEB play here in terms of?
CB players,
when
they have been
other players
playing
try-
a destructive role
For sure.
from a professional. There are 2,600 engineers,
Yeah.
when they should have only about 1,500.
How many engineers?
2,600.
Wow. But isn't it true like a
But one thing,
monkey
this government has done two sensible, they're very industrious thing. Two lethal unions were the CB and the GMOA. CB, they are dissipated. GMOA, they are on the process of
Could you
doing so.
elaborate?
Yeah.
The two lethal unions in this country have been CB and the GMOA. They have never been able to get on top of it.
Right.
This government has broken the CB union into nothing. Right? Because the union guy who was leading is today Kaduela mayor. And the GMOA, they're in the process of dismantling it.
Kudos to them for that. At least.
Well, yeah, you give something to them. System change.
System change. So does that mean their energy policy, they have much more room to create some
I think,
serious
no,
liberalization?
they came for a system change, but they are just maintaining the system.
That is what it
That is
is.
that's the system that was adopted to the UMP and the previous administration.
So, I mean, given these decisions with the CEB, you know, this guy is the mayor or whatever, what do you see their role being?
Now, they must be asked, when you were on the other side of the hill, you were saying, no way, you can't privatize, do that. Now you have done it. Why have you taken the change? I'd like to see the answers.
Is it true that in the 2025 amendment that now if you want to set tariff conditions, that has to be signed off by the finance ministry? So basically re-centralizing?
No, it is to the PUCSL,
Okay.
and then I think the finance minister signs it off.
So both have to sign.
Yes.
But then this just discourages anyone from invest.
So don't ask.
So confused.
Don't ask me.
Sorry.
That's the thing, because if you are knowing the problem and it is given, and then you come back to it, to say now that was the problem, we know it, but we can't do it.
Because anyone who wanted to invest in solar here, they're basically borrowing against like their feed-in tariffs, right?
There is no more feed-in tariffs anymore, they've taken that off.
But
Earlier
they
there-
borrowed against it.
Earlier there was a 5 megawatts or 10 megawatts of 10 megawatts of feed-in tariff. And that's a rate that was encouraged, given feed-in tariff. Anybody can come and add into the network at a rate that is basically prescribed. That's what you call a feed-in tariff. Today, they have virtually brought that down to nothing. So that feed-in tariff was to create entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They made that also competitive overseas, where the overseas guys can come. Why on earth do you require them? I mean, you can require, but when you have competent local guys that can do it, why not?
But why not compete with the foreigners also?
No, foreigners is when it is feed-in tariff. If it's big ones, yes.
Sure.
Why
Not
do
the
you want
smaller,
10
right.
megawatts? You can give a local guy to do it, because
Absolutely.
our borrowing capital is about 15%. Our tax is 30%. A foreign guy will come with cheap interest rates, and his dollar is strong. He'll walk in and crush the local guy.
Fair enough. So in terms of like the battery storage even, do we have the capacity to, because even battery
You can
components-
import it. I mean, any case, our economy is 65% import-led. That's why
Might as well.
dollar depreciation impacts very badly on our cost of living. It has a reverse cycle. It's boomerang.
Yeah.
If you think the worst case scenario in Sri Lanka now is with the war, look at, they say on one side that economy must grow. I believe it has to go at about 7, 8, 10, 9% if you want to come out of the economic turmoil we are in. Then you basically have the Middle East war. Now owing to that, they will have cost push inflation. Now cost push inflation will increase the cost of living. Then the IMF will say, hey, you have inflation.
Yep.
Now do corrective action. Then they'll say increase interest rate.
Yeah.
They'll increase interest rate, then it'll basically bring the contraction in the economy. When you say contraction economy without a demand pull, then what the hell does inflation mean? They say demand pull inflation. So this is cost push.
Cost push inflation.
So what has that got to do with this?
You're right. Yeah.
Right? So when you ask the IMF, they are speechless. This time I asked.
What
Right
is
there.
the response?
They have no answer. That's an internal affair. So they bring the country to the top of the cliff and then they push you down. Because you have to go in different ways. So it was only Mahathir then told IMF, Bhagavan, I'll walk down instead of jumping. Right? Korea was more, this is because the people were saying, no, we'll take the extra leap. Others, they fight because they don't have the capital base. Now, we don't need to slave ourselves for $270 or $280 million a tranche
Yeah.
in order to get to this. That's why I said the officials that negotiate don't negotiate with strength. They negotiate cringing and crawling. I believe IMF's local agent is the central bank in Colombo. That's the problem.
The central bank.
Yeah. You might find them critical,
No,
but someday you will be basically thank the one bugger who took the system on.
The central bank. No.
I have been a victim of witch hunt by them, because they together become lethal. But if you have the conviction that they are part of the problem, not the solution, then the solution is what is coming. NDB Bank is the answer. The banks that have gone underground is the answer. The 17 finance companies that have gone under is the answer. So where, if they are so holier than thou, why are they not? They say, do what I say, but don't do what I do.
Yeah.
They tell the thing, don't have salary increases, don't buy vehicles, etc., they buy vehicles. They increase their salaries.
Are you a believer, like, because to go back to Singapore, are you a believer in like the scrapping away of this import substitution mentality and just bringing in multinationals and foreign direct investments regardless of whether it affects local jobs? Because in the long run, that know-how, that technological sharing, that has a long-term compounding effect.
I don't agree that. I think Sri Lanka, when I say Singapore, I take it as a role model because we have been a failure. If I take the Sri Lanka, that what Sri Lanka should be is like when Lee Kuan Yew came to Sri Lanka in 1972, he was 65 elected, 72 he comes, looks at the port and says, I want to beat Sri Lanka. And he emulated Sri Lanka, went back. And 20 years later he comes and he comes to JR's invitation and port is on strike. And then he gives the example, thank God I came and saw and I took the advantage of developing, but I don't want to go the way Sri Lanka goes because their strike was a killer. Then only SIA thing when he had a strike, he said, go to hell if you want to close it. That gave the courage that no guy will strike thereafter. He looked into what they want, addressed the issues commercially, but they basically told no.
Right.
Now, that's the way that you have got to take decisions for the country.
So you are a proponent of bringing...
No, I am on the basis of Sri Lanka first. If you don't have the capital base, then bring technology in. If you don't have the technology and the capital base, then bring the investments in. So not just open it for anybody to come and embrace Sri Lanka for the market share. You use it for first technical, capital, then both if otherwise.
Right.
So I qualify what you say by having the open economy with motivational approaches coming into that.
Fair enough. No, I understand what you're saying. I can't disagree
Now,
with it per se.
take your own, now you are wanting to do this as a studio. You want to have a, maybe emulating a CNN model. Now, if you are basically told anybody can come and do interviews here, you will have somebody set up somewhere else just coming and just killing your enthusiasm while with cost-free entry. But if you are told to come, now you can tie up with some people, knowledge-wise, then probably you can bring the knowledge into your one. Then you say, okay, I have knowledge, but I want capital. Now bring that capital in, tie up with your knowledge. Then if you don't have both, then you sell your services to whoever that comes in.
Right.
So don't you think that's a better approach than say, okay, from tomorrow open, anybody can come in?
I can't disagree with that. I guess maybe for certain sectors?
Maybe, certain. Okay, if we want to embark a satellite into the orbit, I guess we won't have the competence.
Exactly, right.
Then you do so.
Right. But then isn't that true for all high value? Because we don't
High value revenue yielding.
Yeah.
But you don't need to do that for making, we'll say, for growing rice, making noodle factory,
Absolutely.
making fruits and juices.
Yeah.
You scale it depending on the requirement. Say, if you want to reduce energy, you want to go nuclear, then what do you go to? North Korea, USA, Russia, India?
Yeah. Do you believe in that diversification process?
Oh yes, I believe. Competing is necessary. I don't believe in market, distortions by bringing in maximum retail prices, but competition is the best way forward. Competition gives protection. If you have 5 players, then automatically, now see oil situation. You had in 2022 April, you had a system where we didn't have dollars to be brought in. But today, you have Indian Oil Company, you have Sinopec, you have RS Sparks, you have Shell. All of them will bring in dollars if Sri Lanka can't.
Yeah.
That's the advantage.
All right.
So that's the UMP thinking process as to how to overcome your liability that could come up if dollars are short.
Sure. By having the diversified players
Yes.
in the market.
Competition.
Competition.
Giving them the opportunity to come in at a particular moment.
that actually goes to the last segment, which is Sinopec is Chinese, Shell is American, then you have the Indian one. What is it called? LOLs, IOC.
Indian Oil
IOC.
Company.
So you have all these companies. They have their own geopolitical agendas behind them. Their governments pressure them, so on. When you were foreign minister, you said China is not the only girl on the beach. We have very good relationships with India. We want to explore the EU for the last 10 years and open up to the US, right? You're thinking about a very diversified strategic portfolio. As foreign minister, because I believe you were foreign minister
Yes.
when we gave Hambantota, right?
No. Then I was finance minister.
Finance minister. But you got a very inside look into what was going on.
Oh, yes.
So I was hoping you could explain to me, because I studied geopolitics, I was hoping you can explain to me what negotiations with the Chinese creditors were like. And the Americans, if they pressure you.
Well, thank you for reminding the past of what we had done. You could see what I have mentioned today after 10 years. It's
Yeah.
the same
Same
thing with
thing,
your
yeah,
body.
absolutely.
So it's consistency in policy.
Absolutely.
So that's the first one. Second, the reason why we embraced that was you don't need to get locked into as branded into one country oriented, or it was a unitary policy. Right? Then next is you're going to take a call. Like, I mean, all of you young, you want to marry, you have, say, 15 million Sri Lankan ladies, you have to take a call on one. You can't marry all 15. Then you have to take a policy. Now, how do you take that call? That's the way you're going to fashion your investment into this country. When you have basically, you're going to take what is best for our country. That is the Sri Lankan intrinsic value has to be looked at, as well as what is important for Sri Lanka. Then you open the subject up. You asked a specific question on the Hambantota port. Why did we? We were basically spending 220 billion in building the Hambantota port. That Hambantota port was built, but without a business plan. So now it's built. Now you're paying the loans. We are going to be paying from 2018, we are going to call upon debt servicing. Now, if we call upon debt servicing at that moment with the inheritance of the economy, we would have basically clashed that our revenues are insufficient to make payment. So, the government then decided that we look at trying to leverage this. What we did was, we basically looked at the asset to be given for 70 years on a reverse cycle. What you spend, you pay us back and you lease it out for a period. We believe that India is, when it comes to trade, Indian manufacturing is the best fit for our port because that is a captive market. They don't have sufficient ports, they have manufacturing. We have capacity port, but we don't have sufficient generation. So bring that in, that was best. Then we looked at giving Port of Colombo with certain Indians and operating there. Hambantota was outside that. They were looking at more from bunkering, deep sea port operations and flying the 350 vessels that go below Hambantota. Now, bringing them into containerization, you need vessels to come regularly. So, selling this to China, when the best of India refused, when it looked at China, then they basically looked at an opportunity for us to give it to create a new market. Then, instead of Chinese cargo going into Middle East, they could look at Hambantota as a standing point, transshipment there and go into Europe. Sure. So you looked at when India said can't, it was Japan, China, Korea, those are the countries that could make an impact. China came with a responsive bid because they built it. The cost, they were 95% of that, they were willing to take it back. So our debt servicing was paid off. We basically looked at our debt paid off for the cost of construction, and we give them opportunity, lease it back from us, and basically bringing revenue to the country to pay their loans off.
But there was no feasibility assessment.
So now that's the reason. So feasibility was not there.
So
we capitalized, revenue-wise, asset that was doing idle there.
Right.
Now you're basically having thousands of cars there. You're having containerization coming in.
Right.
So you're giving somebody to create an idle asset into rich cash flow, where Sri Lanka didn't have the cash to do so. So how you could see how we converted an idle asset into a rich cash cow. Now, in the process, you had then geopolitical problems. Why give China? So if USA said can't, if the Indians said can't, if the Koreans, Japanese didn't want, then anybody who comes in is free trade. How we manage that is we should basically have got everybody involved and say, here it is, this is the way forward, this is a commercial port, anybody get involved.
Right. But from a real politic viewpoint, that is not how it would be in reality because Chinese have so much say in what.
Well, that is the way how we handle them. I mean, in that case, you can't trade anybody else except that country. No, you've got to be tough enough to say, I'm sorry, thank you, but no thank you.
So when you do that, I totally believe you'll do that. But then they can come and say, because to them it's a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah, okay.
In an anarchic global
yeah.
system.
Correct.
So they'll come and say, what leverage do you have to tell us no? Fine, we'll take the money away, we'll threaten you, we'll do whatever. They have so many tools in the toolbox. So then as foreign minister of your country, how do you contend with that sort of behavior? Do they behave in such a way?
Now, if you take the present day system, Iran, USA. Now, USA basically went in on a principal way that for their self-protection that they have got to do certain action. But when they were pummeling Iran, Iran didn't basically say, I'm sorry, I'm getting whacked and did nothing. They also put their conditions forward and say, if you want, this is the ceasefire, this is the way to come. Now they're talking Islamabad today. So they can, if the might is not always the right, you have got to use your opportunity in order to negotiate yourself. So if China says so, you can say, okay, take your capital, but the asset is developed.
Right.
Right? This is what the USA did for Japan. Japan came and invested in Chicago and basically suddenly found buildings coming up, Chinese capital, Americans are living and enjoying it.
Right.
That's the thinking process. So if we want to be frogs in the well, we can do so. But if you want to be dolphins in the open ocean, you can also be.
So what asymmetric, because Iran uses asymmetric strategies, right, to fight because they can't. So they've been planning that for 20 years. What asymmetric value do we have?
Now, when you basically had Americans had the entire Gulf states behind them. They didn't unilaterally go. They had the entire Gulf states with them. Likewise, Sri Lanka can have India, basically have all the ocean rim partners, all of them together speaking. That's why I say friends with all.
Right.
So if you basically have China want to do that, then you say Russia, USA, European Union, Japan, come on, we are being crushed. This is not international trade.
Right. I get. Do you have a concern specifically regarding Hambantota port? Are you concerned that this will turn into a dual-use military operation for China? Because they think 100 years.
Everything has its pluses and minuses, but you need to maximize the benefit out of it. I mean, other way, look at Sri Lanka is so well geographically well located.
Absolutely.
If you don't leverage our position, what are we going to basically do?
Agreed. And today's Iran is a great example of how important geography is and how we can use that.
Yes. Now, because the Strait of Hormuz in jeopardy, they are looking at cutting across the UAE with a tunnel across, or going into Saudi Arabia, the Red Sea, and coming out of that area. There are already options.
Yeah. So is there no statutory foreign mechanism for when these projects come about, how we decide what projects to take, who to work with, what gives us strategic autonomy? What's the process?
The national planning of the country should basically be doing that. But I guess we don't have that national planning. We have a no plan is the process, that is no long-term corporate plan. In the private sector, you have corporate planning. You have even longer systematic planning that is on. Then you have operational plan. We have a day-to-day survival plan. That's the country's problem. We go by default.
But isn't that in a zero-sum game world, Mr. Minister? That means we will just get eaten alive by great powers who are ruthless. All empires are ruthless.
But isn't that the real world?
Exactly.
We are going to live in the real world, but we must not succumb our size to their immensity. I mean, if you think on that basis, Sharil, we'll never be able to progress. But that is the real. Now, in Sri Lanka, now you are doing this, but you also have 7, 8 big TV players. Aren't you threatened that they can overrun you? No, you think you have the talent to do so and go forward.
Well, regarding that, actually, we won't even consider them like.
That's the way to
because that is
same way to do it. Now, Singapore is one of the richest countries in the world. They have nothing. If Lee Kuan Yew didn't dare the system then, Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore won't be what Singapore is today. That's the same thinking process what I believe we should be. If we want to think big, you have got to act big.
I agree.
I mean, it's easy to do on an individual basis, but
That's the same.
That's the
You
problem,
extrapolate
right?
that
Yeah.
into the real world. You basically can't. Now, we converted a debt trap into a cash cow. The same thing is what should be done to Matale Airport. That's the same thing that has got to be done to the ports of Sri Lanka. That's the same thing which has got to be done to Sri Lankan Airlines. Sri Lankan Airlines can't survive with $20 billion paid just to overcome a cash flow problem in the first year, which I told. And now they realize it. So this is the game forward. You have cash cows. You have the Sri Lanka catering as a cash cow. You have ground handling as a cash cow. Engineering could be a cash cow. Then you privatize the 3 cash cows and ensure that you basically look at a partner for the flying, which is the loss leading. But loss leader gets the flying rights. So leverage that where private 100% management can be given out and utilize the flying ability to convert maybe a 49-51 deal.
Partnership.
Yeah.
Right. Now, fair enough. So why when President Ranil was in power, why did he take the Lee Kuan Yew approach?
He did because he basically was talking but didn't do it. I mean, he was at time constraint. He had, I mean, look, as for him, he inherited economy that was bankrupt.
Well, I'm not only talking about
Previously. I'm sorry.
Politics for 50 years.
Lack
right?
of political guts.
Right.
I must say that. I mean, being part of the team, we dared, but we basically had our own internal squabble as well. We had jealousy.
Right.
Now,
so it's less about political will and more about the internal problem.
I mean, you need a strong Lee Kuan Yew, Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton type of a thing. You know, you basically take it, move it. Abe in Japan,
Yeah.
Modi in India.
Yeah.
Those are decision makers. You know, Modi does not look back.
Absolutely. And he wins landslide elections.
Yeah. That's because people trust in his decision making power. He's not democratic,
Yeah.
but he's certainly not dictatorial as well.
Agree.
Now the farmers, he basically dared the farmers. Farmers came to Delhi and he basically gave in. So
He gave in to the farmers. Yes. Yeah. But at the same time, he did, I think, fight hard when the Americans wanted to open access to the Indian market. They really refused that, and he had to
Yes.
take in observe the tariff punishment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Actually, just the last thing is obviously we want to touch upon what happened in the past to get your side of things. When you were finance minister, every government has scandals, but you also had a scandal regarding the bond scam, and Ranil actually took complete responsibility for that. What happened from your perspective?
Well, it took 10 years for Ranil Wickremesinghe to owe that he was the he was the central bank governor. The central bank minister, and that another colleague of mine was the commercial bank minister. But it took 10 years because I basically protected the leader without just opening myself up for nothing. Because I had done no fault. I was not the minister of commercial banks. Neither was I the central bank minister. So I thought there was nothing for me to own up or say something when there was nothing behind. But I was caught up in a jealousy battle that was there. And my colleagues used this opportunity to crush me after we won the best financial award thing. But I respect Ranil Wickremesinghe even after 10 years for taking full responsibility of that particular one. But my sadness is it took 10 years to do so.
Are you saying that they kind of set you up in a way?
Not set me up. I'm not an idiot to be set up.
Right.
But I was honest enough, but I didn't want to, is the leader. And basically there was no point, going after and just saying something which was the obvious truth was there. I expected him to say at that particular moment that he was. But he basically, the real truth took a convoluted approach. And the 10 years finally agreed, saying that it was the case. And I must say, scam is only a word that he used, absolutely nothing. It is a storm in a teacup. And that was well manipulated by the opposition. It was not created by the opposition. This was created within the UMP, right, for sense of desperation, because we were doing very well. And that doing well brought this type of reason. It was not created by the opposition, I must say. It was created by within the UMP, 2-3 people. So it was a jealousy battle that was on.
Well, so what were they trying to fight over? They were trying to fight for like the
Position.
president's approval?
No, it was just positions. Because I mean, when you have a nice, if you see a family that is doing well, people fight on it. If you see an individual doing well, you basically become jealous same way. So if it was more upfront by all concerned, I mean, when you know that it is gazetted, that the institution central bank doesn't come under me, and Ranil Wickremesinghe said it was him. And then you basically say the commercial banks don't come under me, it comes under another colleague. Why on earth did it take 10 years for them to upfront themselves?
So when this was happening, were you unaware of, or did you suspect, or what was going on?
Well, after the event, after 1-2 years, only you knew that this was more or less protecting their backs at the expense of me. Okay. So it was sad, but you have got to go through. That's why, I mean, not me, my wife and 3 children suffered immensely for no sin created.
Political maneuvering.
Yeah.
Right.
But you learn, and that's why I feel I want to be a motivational aspect on the others. Never give up at a time when the chips are down. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And this country has that sense of audacity, the sense of belief, that sense of expectation, where teams can come and win, like the World Cup cricket, when Arjun and his team won. Nobody expected that you could. We have the same ability, but we don't discharge that capability.
Fair. I get what you're saying. We want to live in a country, Minister, where our leaders care about giving us strategic autonomy on the global stage and focusing on building internally. We have no enemies in the world.
Yeah.
But for us to be a poor, bankrupt nation it's horrendous.
Sorry, if I take your word, we have no enemies in the world, but we have enough enemies within the country.
That's the problem, right? But for all of history, Minister, the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, that's what they do. And I don't think that has changed. It's just the empires have become more sophisticated. It's very easy to go to a vulnerable nation and divide us, which will always happen.
True.
We want to live in a country where at least a few people at the very top can make some real change.
And also the younger generation, the future generation, at all hustings, ensure that you believe in your own instincts and not on what is projected and sold outside. Ensure doers that have done, not people who are selling the world, who have not even run a boutique shop.
Yeah.
That's the approach that needs to be done. And I believe that, as you quite passionately was talking, both of you, is that I believe I would like to see a country that where my daughters can live is much what you all should be living in that country. If I don't believe that the children or my children can stay in the country, then why should I tell you to stay in this country? But if they are staying in the country, then I have all the right to say, let's make this work. That's the country you and I are there for.
I agree. Do you have any advice on how we can
maneuver this environment?
maneuver this? Exactly. Perfectly.
I think when D.S. Renanayake got this island, nation independence, I saw his thinking process, which he had read somewhere else. He said, we have a very generous disposition in our social composition. Let us take advantage of the industriousness of the Tamils, the business acumen of the Muslims, and the large-heartedness of the Sinhalese put together and make a nation that we don't need to succumb to anybody. I only rekindle my mind from that and tell the world, even though it's 78 years from independence, let's take those important thinking process and let us start again if required. We have certainly gained, but we are not fully exploited. Let's take that corrective action and move forward. The opportunity is ours, not for others to thrust it upon us.
Individual empowerment.
Individual empowerment.
So what is your plan?
Because every drop makes ocean.
I agree. But some drops can make a bigger splash.
Like the Dittavati did. But that was because it was man-made creation. When you could do it, you didn't do it.
I love that quote you just gave, but then these are all great in theory.
Oh, yes. That's why I said, don't. That's why. But we have done it. We can afford to speak.
Sure.
Don't only take talkers.
Yeah.
They have talked many and they have gone back instead of going forward.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give for young entrepreneurs in a practical sense about how they can maneuver this situation?
I would tell them, you have a great opportunity, but they are the system. Don't get caught to what is being sold without examples. Take that opportunity with doers who have been able to do it. Task them the opportunity to think different and act together.
That requires you to absorb a lot of hate, a lot of criticism. Do you have advice for in a risk-averse culture? How do you do that?
I would, going through tormentous time of character assassination and all, the devil is not as dark as black as what is shown. You've got to come out of that and let's start building. Like Lee Kuan Yew had nothing. He had Malaysia against him. He had the people revolting. He had the world in a crisis situation. But he had the vision in him that the direction is what is required. That is the approach. Margaret Thatcher the same way. These are people who transform nations.
Yeah.
That's where things are got to be done.
Not everybody has that, the hardness in them.
That is because the Sri Lankan citizen is not nation proud. He basically sell it for a free ride or a free meal. That approach has to change.
You think so? I think we are quite patriotic, don't you think, as a majority?
Patriotic for what? To get a free meal?
I agree with that.
Patriotic for a free meal, not for what it is.
Because to me, patriotism is building that strategic
And
autonomy.
patriotism doesn't mean blind loyalty,
Yeah.
right? If blind loyalty means then UMP got independent, they should never be out. UMP made the economy, they should be never out. Mahinda Rajapaksa won the war, they should never be out. But then you elect people that have not done anything and they believe that will be better than, this side of the hill will be better than that side.
Yes.
So that means you are a moving loyalty. So now you have gone through those things. Now look at where best your investment is. End of the day, if you have 100,000 rupees, you see how am I going to roll it or am I going to spend it? You invest properly, you will be able to enhance your value.
Create.
You consume it, you have nothing for tomorrow.
Absolutely. On that note, what's your future plan individually?
Well,
Party politics.
I want to see that the UMP and the SJB, two right-thinking parties, one family broken up into two, needs to unite itself and show the rest of the world that errors have taken place, but it's more magnanimous working together, put them together and get the others who are similar thinking minded to work together. I believe if we can get all political parties together is the first way. It may be completely theoretical. But I still feel now that everybody is governed, everybody knows how difficult it is to govern, all put together, maybe the first step. If not, look at what is the a lot of parties working together on a target-oriented journey.
Will you be the next party leader of your party after Ranil?
If I can unite the party, that is big enough for me. Later, people will realize who have done enough, what has been done enough, or who has damaged more. So my job is to unite rather than divide to survive. I believe plural thinking. A lot of them think, unfortunately I have got a tag because maybe of my size or my approach, that when they look at it, they have a more deception, but once you engage, they think this is a completely different animal to what it is.
Right.
That's where, unfortunately, I got to this thing. But as soon as you meet and see, they are completely transformed from what it is. And I particularly like the younger approach that you did, and that's what made me passionate to get involved. And I hope this interview also will yield or emit a message that talent still exists in this country.
Absolutely.
And the full potential needs to be reaped. So what you sow today is what you reap tomorrow.
Absolutely. That is the goal.
But Sri Lankans should not sow something without reaping, or not reap something without sowing.
Sowing it, yeah.
That's the problem.
Bake the pie first.
Yeah. Or at least have the dough to bake the pie.
At least. We'll take a loan to buy the oven. And Minister, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lovely conversation.
Good.